Fighters of the Yemeni Ansar Allah movement and their allies have struck an Emirati vessel off the coast of Taiz province. A military source says the Yemeni forces fired several rockets at the ship and destroyed it early on Saturday. The vessel, owned by the United Arab Emirates Navy, is reportedly a high-speed logistical ship capable of locating mines, controlling military operations and transporting troops and equipment. The ship formerly belonged to the U.S. Navy. Ansar Allah fighters working in tandem with the Yemeni army have so far destroyed several hostile warships and boats. The UAE is part of the Saudi-led coalition in the war against Yemen, which has left thousands dead in the impoverished country. Well, for more on this, we're joined by Hussein al-Bukhaiti, activist and political commentator, live out of the Yemeni capital, Sana'a. Mr. al-Bukhaiti, thank you so much for being with us. Can you give us an update on the latest developments in Yemen? And do you confirm the news of a rocket attack on the Emirati vessel?
Yes, a military source has said today that the vessel was attacked near Mocha port, South Hodeidah, West Yemen. And it's been reported that this ship has been as well used to move Yemeni fighters from Aden and then to be brought to Eritrea for some training, and those fighters after that are taken to Saudi Arabia, to Najran, to fight against Houthi fighter and Yemeni army. And this ship has been active from the beginning of the war. It has been bringing supplies into Aden during the invasion of Aden, and as it is reported that the ship was destroyed, and we're still waiting for more confirmation from an independent side of the war in Yemen. And I believe that the Yemeni army, when said it have fired 5 to 6 rockets against this ship, I think they have really have seen this ship patrolling Yemen coast, and I'm sure that they have really targeted this time.
Mr. al-Bukhaiti, one interesting point we had here in the news was that this was a high-speed logistical ship capable of doing many things, and that it formerly belonged to the U.S. Navy. Given the fact that the Ansar Allah fighters and the Yemeni army have so far destroyed several such warships and boats belonging to the Saudi-led coalition that's waged a war against Yemen, and of course not to forget that the UAE is also part of the Saudi-led coalition. What does this say about those who are supporting and arming this coalition?
Of course, almost all the military and ships owned by the Saudi-led coalition, they are American or British-made vehicles. On the top of that as well, that the United States are supporting the Saudi by their satellites and by their drone and collecting information, and as well by guiding their so-called smart bomb into its target. But we have seen during all 560 days of war in Yemen that most targets are civilian targets. Just in the last 5 to 6 days, about 5 to 6 families, they were entirely killed by the Saudi bombing. And as well, latest report by Amnesty has shown that the missile that has struck Doctor Without Border Hospital in Hajjah was a U.S. smart bomb called Bayfway. And it's really strange when you see that these so-called smart bomb, when they are being deliberately targeting civilians, and on the other hand we see that the United States, who are involved into Yemen conflict, they always cry out loud about what they say crimes happened by the Russian in Syria, but they are keeping a total blind eye on what's happening in Yemen. They keep arming the Saudi-led coalition. They are as well using U.S. fueling jet to keep the Saudi blockade in Yemen, and for the Saudi plane to go far inside Yemen. And I think that the United States and as well the United Nations and Britain are part of this war. They have just 2 days ago, they have blocked a resolution by the Human Rights Panel to do an independent investigation, and they didn't allow this, and the Saudi did not allow that. And it's really strange, how can the Saudi, why the Saudi want the UN and United Convoy, Wald al-Sheikh, to mediate between them and Yemen, and they don't trust the human rights panel to do an independent investigation in Yemen. They show you that they are afraid of the result of this investigation if it will take place, because as the Guardian has said that a third of the target in Yemen was a civilian target, and over 10,000 people has been killed and just by direct strike, and we have 10,000 children who died by the blockade, according to UNICEF, of lack of medicine and lack of food. And
one side is more Shia-backed and the other side is more Sunni-backed in the Muslim country of Yemen, and so we have decided that we are against the Shia. Iran is bad, and they're the boogeymen. And so even though the Houthis, who are Shia, have taken control in Yemen, we apparently decided that our allies are allowed to invade them. Yemen is in that peninsula, obviously, and Saudi Arabia is the larger part of it, and they're next to each other. That's why they're in hostilities. Yemen, the Houthis are Shia, the Saudis are largely Sunni, and you can see that we had to have a Navy destroyer right by there because it's right next to New Jersey. Remember, George H.W. Bush said the reason we were going to liberate Kuwait from Saddam Hussein all the way back in the 1990s was because we could not have any country violate the borders and the sovereignty of another country. Saudi Arabia is doing that to Yemen. That's okay. They give us cheap oil. Let them do whatever the hell they want. In fact, we got a ship out there. Why do we have a ship out there? We're not involved in this war. Of course, we finance Saudi Arabia. They finance us. They buy weapons from us. We've got all that money flowing back and forth. But we're not supposed to be in the middle of that war. Oh, here we go. Now we're getting dragged in. The U.S. military launched cruise missile strikes on Thursday to knock out 3 coastal radar sites in areas of Yemen controlled by Iran-aligned Houthi forces, retaliating after failed missile attacks this week on a U.S. Navy destroyer, U.S. officials said. Why is a U.S. Navy destroyer off the coast of Yemen? Obviously, it reminds you a little bit of the Gulf of Tonkin. In this case, they didn't hit, or they say that they fired the missiles, but they didn't hit. Is it true? The Pentagon reported it. So God has already spoken. It must be true. And the Pentagon also assures us this is limited. No, don't worry. We're not going to get dragged in this war. In fact, the Pentagon spokesperson says these limited self-defense strikes were conducted to protect our personnel, our ships, and our freedom of navigation. The Houthis denied that they ever struck on them. How do the Houthis have cruise missiles that can go dozens of miles? People say Iran. Iran has those missiles? Maybe, barely. They got them into Yemen, and they almost hit one of our ships. None of this story sounds right. Here's what I'm not going to do. Take the Pentagon's word for it. Why do we have ships just sitting there waiting to get fired on? It is not our war. Get out of there unless you're looking for trouble. They say the failed missile attacks on the USS Mason, or the alleged failed missile attacks on the USS Mason, appeared to be part of the reaction to a suspected Saudi-led strike on mourners gathered in Yemen's Houthi-held capital, Sansa. So our great allies hit, in essence, a funeral. Just a couple of weeks ago, they got in trouble for hitting hospitals, and according to human rights groups, hitting hospitals on purpose. So these are our lovely allies, and we've got our ships there to protect them from doing while they do these things. We're not opposed to hitting the funerals and the hospitals. We say, tut, you shouldn't do that. Meanwhile, here's the United States Navy to get your back while you do that. So Michael Knight explained, this is an expert on this issue. He says targeting U.S. warships is a sign that the Houthis have decided to join the axis of resistance that currently includes Lebanese, Hezbollah, Hamas, and Iran. Now, why do I give you that nonsense expert's opinion there? Because he's at a think tank in Washington, and we've decided that, yes, of course, the Houthis are very, very dangerous, even though they have nothing to do with us at all in Yemen. But we'd like to get involved, so they're part of an axis. Here comes war. Anytime we start talking about axes, we're going to go to war in places we shouldn't be and have no business in. Do you care who wins the war in Yemen, the Sunnis or the Shias? And why do you care? Oh, no, they're part of an axis of resistance. What the hell does that mean? And by the way, look at the language. They're Axis, so it must be evil. We got to go get them and we got to go bomb them. But an axis of resistance. What are they resisting? They're resisting us and our allies going to crush them in their own countries. What would you do? Would you not resist? But no, it's an unacceptable axis of resistance. We had to fire upon them. We happen to have a ship right there that would do that firing. Hey, Saudis, have we been good enough to you? Keep that cheap oil coming. All the cheap oil in the world isn't worth getting involved in these wars, having half the world hate us because we bomb them and their families, and then we get sucked into war and lose trillions of dollars, thousands of lives, and do untold damage across.
U.S. military action in Yemen and a Pentagon warning about more to come, with an American warship firing cruise missiles and destroying 3 radar sites there. The strikes come after repeated missile attacks on U.S. Navy ships in the area, and they mark the first time the U.S. has become involved militarily in the civil war between the Houthis, a rebel group with loose ties to Iran, and the Yemeni government, such as it is. Connor Powell is following the story live from our Mideast Bureau in Jerusalem. Connor.
Though last March, the U.S. began providing military and intelligence and air support to Saudi Arabia, which began to confront and to take on these Iranian-linked Houthi rebels in Yemen. So that is beginning to change after 2 missiles were fired at the USS Mason last week, which was off the coast of Yemen. According to Pentagon and defense officials, they concluded that those missiles came from a Houthi-controlled area along the coast. And so today, in retaliation, the U.S. Navy fired Tomahawk cruise missiles, destroying 3 Houthi coastal radar sites. Pentagon saying these limited strikes were conducted to protect U.S. personnel and to ensure the freedom of navigation through an important maritime passageway. But it also comes as the U.S. is beginning to rethink its support for this Saudi-led war against the Houthi rebels. Saudi Arabia has been accused of targeting civilians, and it was just a week ago, before the USS Mason came under attack, that Saudi Arabia killed more than 140 people when it bombed a funeral home. So tensions are rising.